Well, welcome back to the ITAM Kitchen, the place where we all have a collaborative discussion about lively topics that are very relevant to today's world in asset management. So welcome. My name is Bill Talbot. I'm a recovering IT practitioner. I know, go figure, right? 30 years in the industry, and here we're going talking live and talking on topics that are very relevant to what we do every day. And from this, being able to say, okay, how do we look at that next step? So as we do this, today is our third day this week about these scenarios, the specific scenarios. And today's about a hospital, being able to, still multitasking, being able to say, okay, when we start a new job, what do we do? Here's some scenarios for us to think about. And this is what we've been collaborating the entire week. And this one's about a hospital. But before we dig into all the details, because today's we'll do a little bit of review and recap last 2 days, but today's about the 30, 60, 90-day approach, how we're going to start proposing how the next step comes to mind. We're going to whiteboard this out. Before we go there, let's do a little bit of introductions for Deanna and Rob here as well, and then we'll just kick it right off. Rob, do you want to start that off?
Yes, briefly, I am Rob. I am a seasoned practitioner of IT operations and ITAM. Going all the way back to my time in the United States Marine Corps, and that for 30 plus years forward to current day, between two state agencies and within private consulting in the greater world. Thanks. Deanna, over to you.
Hi, I'm Deanna Hennigar, and started off as a technical trainer, and from there I moved into the ITSM world, and then from there I moved all the way into the ITAM, and after I found ITAM, I never went back. So I have been practicing ITAM for about 13 years now, both in as a consultant and as a full-time employee.
And the interesting part about all this, we all have different ways we came into the industry, and we have the passion, the drive, and that's the whole idea. We want to help keep that drive happening out there versus a lot of folks today say, I'm going to check box and walk out because I'm frustrated. There's no direction, etc. It's like, okay, let's figure out how to make this happen, make it more fun. And bring fun back in ITAM. I know, what a concept. So this week's scenario, as far as the inherited, these are inherited tasks we gain when we get this new job, right? We do our best to apply ourselves to new roles and go through the interview process, but what are some of the details that they don't tell us about along the way, right? What really comes to mind? That's what we've been talking about. On Monday, kind of introduce a scenario. This is about a hospital, and it's a CIO modernization without any type of inventory. And he says, make it happen. How often do we run into this? Often and not. We'll say often enough. We'll leave it at that. It kind of drives us all crazy. But the whole idea is we're transforming. The whole idea is you're trying to transform a hospital. Hospitals, when you think about it, they typically don't have much say when it comes to IT. It's just happening. The real purpose of a hospital is about beds, right? How you can serve a patient, how you can get them well and back out the door, moving that next step. IT, yes, it's a necessity, but it's kind of an afterthought in many different ways because the priority is the patient and how to look at that. But we've been told in the role is like, okay, make this happen within 90 days. Tell us how we're going to do this modernization. Tell us how it's going to work. So on Monday, we talked about triaging. It's like better understand, okay, what's out there? What did we inherit? What type of equipment do we put? What type of compliance needs, what compliance parts are we under, right? How are we looking from the stakeholders? How we're looking at this different type of equipment? Because there's one thing to have a corporate environment, there's something else to have medical. You can have some old machines, you may have new machines, it's going to vary. And that's what's bring the new dynamic. So is it something we haven't done before? No. Is it something we are intrigued to say, okay, we can do something? Absolutely. Now, is it new equipment we found? Absolutely. We're going to find some new things. It's cool. It's some of them going to be bleeding edge, right? But being able to say, okay, how can we work this? How can we work that? Because we have to be the rock. That's the most important part. We've got to be the rock through this whole process, and we have the ability to collaborate that. I was talking to a different buddy of mine, Rory. Hey, Rory, shout out to you real quick there, bud. I said, Roy, we're doing this. He goes, are you kidding? It's like, no one ever gets the opportunity to talk like this. I said, I know, until now. And that's what this is all about. Let's talk about how to make that happen. So appreciate that. But we also have to think about what clutter is inside the hospital, right? The clutter, what's sitting on the floor, what's not working, we don't pay attention to, who do we need to talk to, who's some of the support personnel that may know what's out there versus not, right? And being able to say, okay, how do we get that player in place? And that's what we talked about in the triage. Individuals we need to talk to, how much clarification, because again, hospitals usually are not very mature when it comes to IT. They're just not. I mean, I don't care how advanced you are, they're not. It's not negative. Again, it's not a prioritization part. But when we start thinking about the stabilization, right? We'd be able to say, okay, how do we literally stop the bleeding? I know. How do we stop the bleeding? And be able to say, let's get over the analysis, not do analysis paralysis, but what's good enough. Be able to identify, because we don't have an inventory to work with. So we need to, when we have those triage discussions, we need to ask, what's the gut feeling? And that's the best we have. We have to start somewhere, right? Are we going to find more equipment? Absolutely. Is it going to be, are we going to figure it out at the time? Yes, that's our role, right? If you're looking for something prescriptive when it comes to asset management, you're in the wrong place. I'm just saying you need to be creative, insightful, et cetera. And that's what makes it fun. Because when you start talking about modernization, you also think about, okay, what else is in there? In this case, we even talked about BYOD. And the BYOD, not just from a doctor's perspective, but more importantly from the patient perspective and how that was separated. We've got to think about that. This is not something we talk about typically in the corporate environment, but here it is, right? In the hospital, we have to think about that, right? And you have to think about the dynamics. You have a teaching institution that's included with this, right? Maybe as part of a merger, you have multiple different hospitals that are operating independently, and now they're trying to get uniformity. So you've got some of the, I'll say, the political dynamics, personalities, things like that. And we're brokering those discussions. So we've worked through all this to date. And if you haven't seen it, look in the last couple of days. We've been doing awesome. It's still there on YouTube. I think it's still on LinkedIn. Sometimes I don't know what LinkedIn does, but it is what it is. But today's about the 30, 60, 90-day approach and how we want to look at our program forthcoming. And that's where it's like, okay, let's talk about it, write it. And you know what? I already have a chart, a template here for us to capture it along the way. So we're literally going to whiteboard this as we go. We have not seen much as far as a scenario outside of what we talked to. And the whole idea is we're working real time. You know why? Because this is how we deal in the real world. We do our best to say, okay, we know as much as we can, but there's always going to be things to talk about and discuss. And we want to provide a community to do exactly that. So with that, what comes to mind? What's one of the first things, Deanna or Rob, whoever wants to start? I'm totally cool.
Yeah, let's start with that whole inventory thing, right?
Okay.
Because you're not going to be able to manage what you don't know. So regardless, at some point, some form of inventory activity must be performed. Now you can do this, let's say, through what tooling you might have present, but based on this scenario, they didn't have anything that was recording any inventory. The assumption is no inventory, but they have stuff. They bought stuff. And more important than anything else, the stuff that's operational and that's in place right now should be up, live, and talking. So if nothing else, a very quick partial inventory can be done just based on the simplest of tools. Some PowerShell scripting and some SCCM or MECM management. Right? You can bring those resources together and very quickly assess what you have live and operational and talking now. So there is a great basis point from which this could be done within the 30-day period very, very quickly.
I'm going to throw in there this. There's also the stakeholder estimates too. We're going to have kind of a gut, I'll just call it the gut feeling. I didn't want to write that on the board, but it's kind of the gut feeling. What do they believe they have? I think that's also important.
Within the 30 days too, remember we talked about in order to get where they want to go, we need to identify the stakeholders and very quickly spin up the working group and the meetings around their activity.
Governance.
That's a 30-day activity. And assign project management as a steward and as a custodian for the project itself. keep us on track.
What else comes to mind, Deanna?
Well, we also have to establish what we are not going to fix.
Good point.
Right. That's scope definition.
So, yep. And then we
Well,
also
that's a
have
good
to,
roadmap too, right? I'll say it's a scope/roadmap.
Mhm.
Got it.
we also need to understand we don't want to break anything on the clinical side, while we're fixing the IT side. We have to be very cautious of what is already working.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to keep the parameters in place, and I think that also goes with open communication.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and define those methodologies that are not intrusive or least intrusive. Because like you pointed out, we don't want to impact hospital operations.
Right.
Patients coming there to get healed, to be made to feel better. You don't want to interfere in any way, shape, or form with that activity.
We don't need a large.
Thing is, during a heart transplant, you have an IT system go down.
Right.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to keep a small presence at the same time. You know, we can't send 100 people to go start counting the equipment. We have to go in methodically with just a few people, even their own people. But we don't want to look like we're in there interfering.
Right.
Nope. Absolutely.
Very low.
Another point is we're just learning this job ourselves, because within the first 30 days, we may have been in there 1 or 2 weeks, and now we're establishing the 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a learning curve on quite a number of fronts.
We could set up like an issue identification and resolution sort of workshop
Mhm.
too, workflow.
Yeah.
First, make sure it's within or not within scope, and then second, how we're going to do it with the least methods possible.
Right.
Low input.
Mhm.
And what are their major pain points at this time? We know it's equipment before we can do any kind of counting, but there may be a few things that we can handle within these 30 days, a low-hanging fruit, something that will make them look more efficient to begin with.
Yeah, identify any quick wins and jump on those right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, add value.
Absolutely. And to your point, at that point, those quick wins, right? It could be device types. It could be different facilities. You might be you're working with clinics versus actually within the hospital. You may be doing IT first. There's all sorts of different priorities and quick wins you have in there.
Yep.
Just kind of proof of concept, right? Because it's also about gaining credibility. Which, if you think about the asset manager, we talk about this all the time, but when you talk about it from a hospital with a live environment, this is life and death critical. It actually helps you have more of a spotlight on yourself when you start talking inside this environment, and that's something to think about as you go through this. So, is there anything else on 30 day? Are we ready for the 60 as we move forward here?
I say we move to the 60.
Okay, excellent. I mean, I love we filled it up. We probably fill another page if I was to guess. But it's like, let's continue our journey, because at this point we have kind of a little bit of a baseline to start from. We have some information to say, here's where we are. May need to adjust along the way, but it's being able to say, okay, facilitate, move forward. Because at this point, we also have some of those KPIs and metrics we can start measuring, right?
Mm-hmm. And Curtis Paul makes a good point. I'll read it. If you were coming into current operations before audits begin, it's important to have operational procedures in place, reviewed, corrected, so that anything new coming in, like purchases or reclamation, get processed at the same level of accuracy as any auditing initiative that'll occur for the existing assets. So that's really good, because that sets us up for our first 60-day activity. And that is a process flow for current purchases and future purchases can be established that feeds into a proper inventory of everything within the network.
And the one thing I want to add to that little nugget, and I thank you, Kurt.
Yeah.
There. Sorry, I didn't see that. So that was good. That was good, Adam. Good add. Is those processes, they may say they're not documented, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to capture those as you're having those discussions. That's part of your role, right? You're saying, well, I'm not a process person. Well, you are.
Yeah. So for the 30-day activity, you're standing that stuff up. For the 60-day activity, you're learning and you're going to build that out and record those work, get those things together. So you sort of begin a documentation effort.
Absolutely, because you're also at this point, when you've captured this is also where you're back to your governance, right? You have your governing council, governing committee, whatever you want to call it, right? You actually, from your stakeholders, that's also where you're going to start to review that after 30 days, right?
You could put initial build out efforts under the 60 days. So that could be one of our ideas. And then that'll extend to activity going into the 90 day.
And if you think this is going to be a 2-hour activity, you're a little misinformed, right? It's going to take some elbow grease and a little bit of effort to do that and make that happen. And further, I mean, leverage the technology you have or whatever's from. You might have to actually do Visio flows. I mean, I've done plenty of my day, but being flow charts or be able to just itemize it out. But you need to be able to communicate that. That's critical, right?
Yeah, there's other tools for that. Visio is the only one.
I was just using as an example. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. At this point, you kind of know your footprint, right?
Yep.
You have better insight of your footprint. Let me say that. You may not have grasp of your footprint, but you may have better insight. What comes to mind with the 90 days or the 60 days, right? At this point, we're starting to understand, we kind of understand, when I say footprint, we also understand what tools we have to work with, right?
Yep.
At this point.
By now, we understand where the tools aren't working as well.
Right.
Okay, so it's both sides of the tools, because we fixed as many as we could in the 30 days, and now we're seeing where the larger gaps are.
Yeah. You could list out existing tools, take an inventory of the tools and what functionality they're providing. Like the other thing too that we talked about in previous sessions is the alignment activity between business objectives, how IT supports those business objectives, and then how ITAM is supporting those objectives, right? And so when you start to do this kind of an exercise, then you start revealing what tools are we using to do the job right now, no matter what they are. Whether there are simple Excel spreadsheets and bits of code here and there that we run from a security standpoint, from an inventory standpoint, all the way up to full, really expensive, like IT service management suites, of which there are many, and other tools. So if we have that, then that's a good starting point to evaluate how are these tools serving us? Are we getting our money's worth? And do we need to evaluate replacing those tools or interfacing those tools?
We might not be able to ready to evaluate that at the moment.
Not within 60 days, but a starting activity at 60 days.
Right. And
then that'll be a future activity going forward, a little longer term plan.
Yeah. Should I just go put that on the 90-day for us?
Ultimately, there's going to be activity there. I just believe that the start of that activity could be within the 60 days.
Absolutely.
Resourcing for all of this too could be done within either the 30 or the 60 day mark. That's a plan.
And keep in mind your resourcing. They may say, that's an interesting request. It's not going to happen. From the resourcing part. as well, because like I said, there's no budget. There's no budget. Just from an awareness standpoint, it's not uncommon to feel that. So again,
Come on, connection.
I've been in this scenario. It happens. Hey, it happens. You're doing great. But realize on the resourcing, sometimes as much as you try to ask for that, it's like it's just not possible. It's like somehow you have to make it work, right?
Well, if they can't give people, they can give AI agents, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it could be a whole separate topic on that one. Yeah, we'll probably end up hitting at some point. Yeah, but I think the resource is extremely critical. Deanna, what else comes to mind in the 60 days?
In 60 days, not only the resourcing, but we understand where the other gaps are that we didn't see. Because just not only resourcing, we are getting closer to understanding what the timing factors are within the hospital. Which ones do they need done first? We've established that they have needs in 30 days, but now we are prioritizing how we're going to change what they need.
Yeah, identify unks.
Yeah.
Right, because the timing might be resources. To your point, there's a big initiative happening within the hospital or the clinics. Maybe some rebuild happening. You never know from a facility perspective. It may be that there's something where a specific technology is showing up at a specific location. Because sometimes we do a modernization refresh in a hospital, you have to say you have new lasers coming in. They're being installed. It's a whole build out. I'll just call it that way. You have that, and then all of a sudden the equipment shows up, and it's already sitting on the dock before the building's done. Build out's done, right? So you've got to work with that and say, okay, how do we work with this law of dynamics? Because there's a lot of moving parts. It's not where it just ships up. It's not where it just shows up on the dock. You tag it, install it. Right? There's some additional planning involved. So again, I just use those as potential scenarios because that's what comes to mind for me. Because there's just you have to manage that. Again, we have to be the rock. It's like that's nice. That needs to happen, but we have to look at the big. We have to step back and say, okay, we can get stuck in the weeds, but we have to step back and say, okay, how are we going to orchestrate this entire change? Right.
I have another item for our middle column, and that is to establish the reporting and or dashboarding of this information that we're learning from column A and into column B. That's what's going to develop that single pane of glass, if you will, or single source of truth around what it is that you're trying to identify.
Absolutely.
And then we're also in 60 days, we've established the items that can't change and trying to, instead of keeping those things broadly wide, have kiosks set up instead so that we can pull it off of the main system as we update and upgrade. I've seen some companies have to, like we said, something may be on Windows 7. So get as much of the old things out of the environment and move the items that only work under the old environment to kiosks instead of keeping them hospital-wide.
Yeah. If ITAM is not interfacing with information security, there's a massive gap right there and a lot of vulnerability. I would highly recommend starting those discussions, probably within the 30 to 60 day window.
Yeah.
Because they're going to identify things for you, so it won't be unknowns anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that within 30.
Yeah.
Let's go back there.
Security and patching.
Oh yeah, patching within your ITSMs too. I have experience with that. And it could be automated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think also from the 60-day perspective, you have to show progress. That's the other thing. As we're looking at this, you have to show that output because they're counting on you to keep that informed. Bill Thurman, he's actually a member inside the co-op. He's also the CFO for an organization. He was teaching our members at one of our summits. He says, you know what? I'll give you a budget all day long, but that means now you have to keep me informed. I want to know I want to make sure that the money's being spent well. And I need for if I'm going to give you the money, that means I'm also delegating that responsibility for communication on you, right? Let's see. I see Rennie just posted something there. Oh, I got races.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely. That's a great point. Is we need to make sure we do have the races identified. I'll put that up here in the initial bill. And some people say, "Well, we're dealing with process, et cetera." It's like, no, the roles and responsibilities is extremely critical, even if you have a shell in place, because then you understand from who's kind of doing what as far as moving that forward. So that's a great point. So thank you, Ray, for that. And then also within the 60 days, we're actually starting to analyze data, right? We don't talk about we haven't talked about much of the analysis. We're doing a little bit of the build up, but we're actually analyzing. This is where the analysis comes into play, right? And we're going to do drafts. Don't worry about the final part yet. But this is where the drafts or the analysis, you say, okay, I'm going to do a finger in the air. This is what I see. It's that confirmation of what you're seeing, right?
Yeah, that's why the reporting and dashboarding.
Yes.
This data in front of people that it will make sense to, or that need to know it, for informed decisions.
Yeah, informed decisions.
Absolutely. Well, this is also where the team collaboration happens.
Yep.
Because this is also your opportunity to raise your hand for help. Let's just say, right? So what we're horrible at, because we like to be perfectionists with an IT, especially with our role, is like, we don't like to ask for help. We're horrible at it. Well, this communication is that opportunity for it. If something's not right, you need to make sure you're talking about that. Communicate that outward. Don't be shy. Because if something's wrong, someone's going to tell you. Don't worry about it, and don't worry about being wrong, because we're all wrong.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. It's called having a little bit of thick skin as we do this.
We'd rather have the surprises.
Yeah.
Surprises is a part of life for us. They don't always have birthday candles on them either. Okay, we'll just put that way. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a few more things coming from Randy. Hold on one second. Okay, we have one comment from Randy. Everyone needs to know the responsibility in the grand scheme of things. Absolutely, yes. And this is a great little transition to our 90 days auditing, right?
Yep.
Checking what's happening. We're starting to have data coming in. We're doing some little analysis. So we got our finger in the air. It was like, okay, let's start and let the rubber meet the road. And for some organizations, this may be a 6-month plan, not a 3-month plan, as far as 30, 60, 90, but the same approach is taken.
Yeah.
Everyone's a little bit different. It depends upon how much you do things by committee. I'll just say it that way, or the government you're working with. But yes, your evaluation and analysis. Let me put that over here. I'll just have put auditing begins. I like that.
Yeah. Also, to Rennie, to your comment, for instance, around IMAC updates, ideally IMAC updates should be a near real time. If a technician is moving the desktop someplace between spaces or changing ownership, that kind of stuff gets interfaced within the ITSM system, right? Within request fulfillment, right? So that information should immediately be available to the other systems that are going to be reporting, so that you know when it happens, how often it happens, how many devices are moved, what's that mobility, what are you adding, what changes are being applied. All of that stuff, the data can come from the ticketing system and any inventory systems that are available. By this point, within this overall project plan, we've already established what those things are, and if we haven't set this up in such a way that it's near real time or real time, now is the time to look at improving the frequency of that.
Well, I think we need to expand upon that a little bit more too, because this is also a critical juncture on the side. Because I put that as a team enablement, right? So it's about that awareness enablement. That's kind of where I was headed with that. Break fix, typically we always talk about, right? help desk and break fix may be the same group. It may be different. It depends on who's capturing it on the help desk, right? Your service desk, if you want to say service
Also,
desk.
request fulfillment.
Yeah.
On a technician, yeah.
There's also, this is where the process comes as well.
Yep.
Right? From like change management. Change management is extremely critical in making sure that comes in place.
And hopefully, change management is like properly documented, and you have the
And
appropriate
documentation, yeah.
meetings to do approvals. And then as they're pushed out, those that don't work out so good, they have their fallback plans immediately. You could learn from stuff like that. But yeah, interfacing with the change management and seeing the results in near real time is really important
Yeah.
to handle on it.
Absolutely.
And if some of these things aren't aligned, this is when we realize it in the 90 days.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you have to be prepared for that. Let's dig into that a little bit. I think it's also be prepared because when you see the light that's not there, it's like, well, it's all supposed to work according to the book, according to what you've been trained, right? And according to the instructions, it just all happens. It's like, no. This is where the human element comes into play, and you learn how to communicate and align and dialogue because people are going to say, I don't have enough resources to, for example, change management. I've told this story on a separate session. They say, I don't have resources to do that, right? And at that point, that becomes an issue, right? That goes back to fall back here, almost to like the 30 days. Not 30 days, but really kind of fall back to an issue that needs to be brought up to leadership to say, okay, we have a problem and we need to work through this. And we will have that dialogue is extremely important. Again, that open line of communication. And that happens throughout the entire process. This cannot happen in the back room. It cannot be nearly enough. And this is not an AI generated activity either. I'll just go ahead and point that out, right? If you're trying to get AI to do all this, have fun.
No.
That's all I have to say.
AI doesn't have hands.
No, you're not going to be able to get AI to do all of these things. You might be able to get assistance with it, and you may get some help along the way, right? But this is going to be a system that's fully designed by AI, and if it is, I sure hope that you've done due diligence and done all of the necessary quality checks before pushing this out there.
Yeah, because it's something I'm working on is the difference between AI and actual automation. Because AI is about the smarts. Your automation is actually about that integration that happens on a regular basis, right? Yeah. And you want to differentiate between those two. Right now, you're seeing a lot of intermixing between the two terminologies. They're actually two separate activities. Yeah. That's what we're kind of talking about as well, right? Integration is one thing, but leveraging AI to have, I'll say, the smarts and the intelligence behind it is a totally different realm. Not saying you can't leverage it. Absolutely, some tools are going to help raise the level of understanding and awareness and how you can be more strategic in our roles. But just keep in mind, some of that, it just still has to, it needs a human touch. One has to say it, right? We'll put it in place.
This is also where the DevOps experience kind of helps in a situation like this before you're going to push anything to production. You're going to go through dev test and then production or some intermediate stage between test and production. You add as many as you want. You can have 3, 4, staging, whatever, right? But the most important thing is you've ironed out those known bugs, and you have the opportunity to find anything that you weren't aware of ahead of time.
No, that's great. That's a great point. It's also about and you'll define this throughout, is that success criterion that you're going to have for the program, right? That success criterion, I'll just put that up here.
You go all the way back to 30 days and say, define success criteria.
And by the way, the success criterion isn't just 1 or 2 items. I've seen, it's just gonna be 2 items. I said, no, it needs to be like 3 pages. It's too much. It's like, nope, that's your use cases. Those are exactly the use cases you need to work with, and you may refine those. That's okay.
Yeah. This exercise is an excellent sort of like way to go about visualizing what it would look like over the course of 90 days. This kind of an exercise is the sort of thing that you can do within your own environments, with these various scenarios. And I highly recommend that get practiced at it. It's going to reveal so much more to you, and it's going to make your planning more efficient. and your outcomes more successful.
And on that note, there's one thing for us to do as we're talking about a collaborative. So you definitely want to, within like a community, like a co-op, and what we have going on, we're more than happy to help have dialogue like this so you can work on yours. So you work on your own version of this, and then what you do is you review this with your major stakeholders. You might do it individually, you might do it collectively. But exactly what Rob was talking about, you have to define this kind of plan with them, because otherwise you're not going to get buy-in from them. That's going to be extremely important on that part too. So yeah, no, absolutely. This part, as far as the dialogue, I do this all the time. I've done entire whiteboards that are how big is it? Well, like 14 feet wide, and filled it up. And I had 25 people in the room, and we figured out what that plan was for a couple of years. But everyone bought in on it because they were part of the solution, and that's extremely critical.
Mm-hmm.
What's up?
You say also in 90 days, you have an idea of what they didn't know they needed.
Mm.
I want to address Rennie's comment. She just put up should be, but what doesn't, for instance. That's when you have to come to your chosen deity meeting and sit down with the tech and say, why didn't you follow procedure?
Yeah.
We like employment.
We may have to change the procedures, but that's okay.
Absolutely. That's fair.
Absolutely. And the one thing, and yeah, I think I know where Ray's coming from on that too. I won't say School of Hard Knocks, is when you start thinking about the technicians, maybe there's something you actually also put within their own performance plan.
Yeah.
You have to at that point. And that's it's not just recognition, it is recognizing, but actually measurements. And it's like, well, we haven't had to do this. That takes an extra effort. It does. But here's the juncture. If someone doesn't do it, who dies?
Right.
Right. Again, we're talking about a hospital. Right?
That's right.
This is life and death, right? So it's like, okay, are you willing to risk it at that point? That's someone will take, and that's a leadership discussion as well. But you have to think about, from the technician standpoint, you need to make sure you have your checks that it's not just check boxes, but also fulfillment of these updates as they're occurring. Because, for example, if you have a system that's, when we talk about change management, if you have a system that gets changed out overnight, right, and all of a sudden you have an entire network down.
Yeah.
I have a whole example. This happened to me this week actually. You've impacted the entire hospital. It's a complete outage, right? I saw something like this happen as I was flying through the airports this week. This happened in San Diego, flying back. I walked in, all the entire displays for the entire airport are down.
Oh.
It's seeking the server. The entire airport was down, right? It was down the entire time I was there. They could not get it back up. That's an airport. And they had to do things manually, right? But you put that in a hospital now, it only intensifies. This is real. This is happening, right? So look at those changes. You have to be aware of what's happening. Okay, so we have, I see a Rennie comment came up.
Yep. Yeah, I think that they're going to have they're going to have an initial conversation with the leadership first, especially if it sounds like this is problematic within their environment, and that, we can help.
Oh yeah. We're not meant to be the police. I think that's an important part. People's look at, I've seen it out there. I've seen the posting, ITAM, we're the police, and we're policing this. We're not the police. We're the informers, right?
Right.
We're the informers helping other people make decisions. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I love it. We're the data detectives.
Yeah.
I love that little terminology. We're the data detectives helping us in place. But this is also where you see the congruence happen. Again, we're looking at the measurements. We talk about the tools, the metrics, things like that. That still continues on to I'll say 90 days or as you move on. Because again, with the governance, and the governance is happening here too. I don't have it listed, but the governance is happening on a regular basis. If it needs to happen monthly initially, fine. It needs to happen monthly. happen on a regular basis. And then it may go say quarterly. I don't know about every 6 months to a year. I find that actually people get a little lax. This is just my experience. I don't know, Rob, what you see when it comes to governance. I'm a quarterly kind of guy as far as updates, at least once you get rolling.
Quarterly review and updates. And then, or for most of the folks that I deal with, it's at an annual review and update process. That's that cycle. But I prefer to do things in much shorter intervals. No, Denny.
One of the other things is, in a plan like this, we're all actually going to be streamlining some of the 20 or 30 help desks and break-fix departments that we have. So we need to start cross-training our people, because some are going to be let go, but some are going to be moved over to a different department.
I'd say, yeah, you've got the bandwidth for it. You should totally cross-train.
Yeah.
You saw some work.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing with the cross-training, back to your point, Deanna, and it's what makes me think about that. If we're about to say we're going to release some individuals,
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to raise my hand. It's like, do we have to?
Yeah.
Because if we can allocate them to the asset management and help this, and as far as manage the assets, you just gain a tremendous amount of help, right, from the checking balance.
This is where I would also identify your train the trainers, the people who have a little bit more savvy, who can learn things quicker, who can then train somebody else faster. That's one of the things I always raise my hand for. Why don't you let me train somebody?
I firmly believe in training opportunities, especially leavers. I did it right across the street from where I'm standing, actually. It was one of those things for all the people that are getting ready to leave, the 30 years plus people. They were getting ready to go around their retirement, and none of those processes were documented. Right? They knew them, and they've done them over and over again, but now new people coming in have to be shown those processes. That's an opportunity to record anything you don't have recorded.
Right. Don't let knowledge walk out the door.
Oh, but it costs a lot to replenish.
Yep.
It's painful.
Yes.
It's painful. And as you're thinking about this, right, we just outlined kind of a high level what you're looking for. Absolutely. Again, this could be a 6-month effort. This might be a 1-year effort, depending upon your organization, how quickly you have meetings, how quickly you do it. Try to expedite this as much as you can as far as moving it forward. I would go quicker than 30, 60, 90 on your format, but you may say it's 2 months versus 1 month for each one of these activities, right? But pay attention to your timeline. Your time is critical. The time because there's also credibility for you as an individual, you as the asset managers, because you've been hired to perform this job. You've been hired to say, okay, how we can move this forward? Because you might find out when you get here that actually you've done the best you can, you still need help, and it has to be outsourced.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
This
That's
is
not unusual. Yeah.
Well, this is just a 30, 60, 90-day plan in order to get things off the ground. But invariably, these things are going to lead to continuous improvement exercises and implementation plans that could span up to 2 years, especially if you eventually decide you need a tool and you're going to implement that tool. And then you're going to interface with that tool. So this is just the start.
Because to your point on some of the identifying the unknowns, let's go back to that.
Yeah.
For me, those unknowns, all of a sudden you may have morphed and found an entire spot of technology that can't move.
Yeah.
Right. Or it's planned for change in 2 years out.
Yeah.
Again, it's going to change your timeline a little bit, right? And those unknowns may have say, I need a completely different infrastructure for it. Again, I'm just making things up as we go, right? There's no set plan on this. But at the same time, because of the changes, the front room, et cetera, a lot of hospitals in the last couple of years have gone through a lot of rebuilds, right? That wasn't easy on anybody, is the best way to put it, because patients still had to come in, patients still had to be checked in, whether it's on purpose, that sounds good. It was on a regular activity, or if it was during construction, didn't matter. You still had to get patients in and patients out. That doesn't change with anything we're talking about here.
Goat management comes to mind. scope management, and maintaining those continuous operations.
Mhm. You did not say dope management, did you?
Scope
Scope. Okay, cool.
management.
I'm just double checking. Okay.
Dopamine
It's a
management.
Friday morning. I didn't hear it clearly. I thought you said dope, DOPE management. It's like, no, we're not going to dope management.
No,
That's a whole different, that's a different department.
It's an individual scope. There are professionals out there that can help with that.
Exactly.
One of the other things, you also don't want to be too far on the bleeding edge with some of these because you won't have anybody who knows how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Tried and true technology is usually the most reliable path. If you want to experiment beyond that, that's okay. That's a scope issue.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind as you're going through this process, as I'm looking through some of our use case here, right? There's a lot of stakeholders involved. You've got the clinics, you've got CISO, you've got to have the hospitals, you have the IT folks. So you could have over 100 individuals because of the type of number of hospitals we have and staff, et cetera, right? They're actually stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
Don't fearful of that either, right? Because when you start doing the inform and updates, and we're talking about the governance updates, you're also going to have to inform the team. There's going to be the team updates because you have to keep them informed. There's one thing to say the stakeholder leadership, that's great. But you also need to be, you are the person navigating this ship, you're steering it. That means you keep the entire team informed. So there are team updates that occur every month. I'll put that up here. And let me expand upon that. It's not about the number of people. It's about who you inform, how they receive the information. Because those team updates and how you inform it, you're also going to have to do some validation. You're new to this organization. So because you're new to the organization, you're not sure how they communicate internally. We've got to do an investigation on that as well. We didn't write that up. But how do they perform the updates? How do they, for the executive or even the teams? Sometimes you have to look for those communication channels. Say, okay, have any examples I can leverage? And always ask, right?
Well, William Tan has a good comment here.
Yes, a long one, but good.
It is good.
What we got? Useful 369. Consistently check and monitor things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if you have a team you're able to do that with, great. And sometimes your team actually can also be your stakeholders. So, Tan, I really appreciate that. That's a great point.
That's part of the reason for having a project manager assigned to it, so that this way you get that level of reporting back. Like I think that when we originally talked about it, we talked about a minimum of a 2-week check-in for all the stakeholders and the parties, and for those updates to go out in an automated fashion, so everybody's informed.
Just keep by that automated fashion. You can still put it. You need to communicate via also multiple mediums too.
Yep.
Because it may be an email communication or a chart. You go to a dashboard somewhere. That's great. But realize you still need to have, I'll call it that call, the Teams call, conference call, however it's done within the organization. And yes, conference calls still occur. Is you need to provide that update and verbally talk to them. And have those recordings available, because people are not always going to make it because of all being prioritized in multiple different directions. So Tan, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Call a single, minimum 15 minutes. So just when you stand up, everybody's present, and you either have stuff to address or you don't. And if you don't, everybody gets their time back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because just this alone, we've been brainstorming on this with you because this is what goes through our brains.
Yeah.
Everybody else's lines. So I appreciate all the contributions. This is great. And from this, being able to say, oh, wow, there's more. There is more, right? This is just kind of high level steps. You're going to say, well, I'm going to get stuck in analysis paralysis. Well, if you know you're already going to get stuck in analysis paralysis, that means you're going to need a coach somewhere, internally or externally, but to say, when I go in, I need you to help pull me out so I can get my head above water again. And there's nothing wrong with asking for that assistance as well. Because whether it's leadership or peers or something like that, don't be afraid of that. We all do it. Even your executives do it, right? Sometimes I know executives that love to get in the weeds. It's like, why did you just do that? Oh, I enjoy it. Okay, it's not your role. It's like, I know I enjoy it. I'm going to go back to my world. I get it. And they realize they do it because that's where they enjoy their work. That's how they were able to advance where they are, right? So don't take as a negative, take as a positive. You found out what your niche is, you're loving, that's great. But sometimes we need help. It's like, okay, let's get back to where we're thinking about focusing, or where we need to be focusing on, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our time again, which is great. I'm loving these sessions, actually. When we start wrapping this up, so let's start on the wrap up here, right? We've talked about a lot. We've talked about the triage. We've talked about how we're going to stabilize. We're talking about our 30, 60, 90-day plan. It doesn't mean these are not intertwined along the way.
Right.
We're going to be doing a little bit of each. I know we separated just for discussion. If you look at it, just this week alone, you look at the dialogue we actually had very different dialogues, right? Because we're looking at this from multiple angles. It's a kind of a three-dimensional view, if you want to look at it. Actually, almost four-dimensional. That's a whole different topic. But what you want to think about is you have to, this is a program you're working through. You cannot treat it as a project. This is a program. Mm-hmm. And when you start thinking about that, it's like, okay, it's not about what happens just tomorrow. It's what happens in the next year, the next 5 years, right? And that's the other part to keep in mind as we're working through that. You're seeing a lot of the framework here and the footprints to help us move forward. But it's also being able to say, how do we drive that? Who do we talk to? Who do we make sure that from a legacy perspective, that this stays in place? Because I'll give an example. I've done systems myself, done implementations. Rob, I'm sure you have, and Deanna, you have too, right? Phenomenal. Some of the best things that ever happened. They've been in there for years. New leadership comes in place, whether it's for the ITAM team or whether it's the CIO, et cetera. They rip it all out, put in a simple tool. They go back like 10 years as far as their advancement and maturity. Huh? It's important for you to figure out how to inform this and make sure that transitions easily. So you're going to do your best to not have that happen, but realize that may happen still.
Sure.
I don't say that as a Debbie Downer. I say it more as about change is the only constant we have in our world. And we have to be prepared for that. It's not just a sit-down job. We don't do a sit-down job. Sit-down job is not our roles. If it was, I would have gone myself a long time ago. I can speak for Rob. I can speak for Randy. I can speak for Deanna. Probably a couple others here on the call on this session as well. We'd be bored. It's just called our ADHD, right? We get bored because we just don't have the dynamics. But keep that in mind. The human element behind this is extremely critical. We did push AI a little bit of the topic here. You kind of said, yeah, AI can't do this. It's absolutely true. But it's also being able to say, how can you be you, right? If you're not able to, I will also say, if you're not able to address this, just say you can't do it. Because I have seen a lot. I've seen this primarily in outsourcers. So outsource, you have it out there, and I'm going to pick on them a little bit, right? I'll just call them out. They bring somebody in who's never done this before.
Right. Maybe
a contractor, maybe internal. They just got finished getting certified for the first time with whatever certification you want, whether it's the vendor or otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it's like, they show up day one, they don't know where to go. If you run into that, if you're that person that had that scenario, ask for help. Seriously ask for help, because you're not going to help the customer by you being there. Yes, you're helping the revenue of the company, but you're not helping the company, or in this case, the hospital, do that next step. I will say that consciously, as being an outsourcer, I've been around it for 30 years, is you can't be the crutch, right? If you're going to learn and grow and you're going to dive into it, dive into it. This is not a joke. This is real. It's real type stuff. So with that, I just put a little comment there. as we wrap this up, Deanna, you want to kick us off any type of wrap up that happens with this or anything we've touched on this week?
One of the things is when we establish a communication timeline, the who needs what when, remember that's also going to be something that flows. Maybe in the beginning only certain people know, but then later on your team is going to change. So flow with your communication knowledge as the project grows and then eventually comes to an end.
I wanted to touch on something that Bill mentioned just a minute ago. That is, you get a change in management and they decide to scrap this whole thing and they're going to do something else, something different along the way, right? One thing that you can do to preserve this, right, is to take the record of this effort, right, and use that as a template for similar activity, right, and take it away. You know, that'll be something that you'll own. That'll be something that's part of that. As long as it doesn't breach things like ownership and proprietary information, et cetera, then you should be okay on that, right? Take that away because at some point, right, they may come back and say, hey, we need an effort just like this 5 years after they made the change to abandon this effort. And in that case, you'd be in a position to come in and say, well, you know what, I can help you with it. I know how it went the last time where we got. If you want, come in, I'll sell my services to you and you can stand this effort up again. And you can be right where you're supposed to be, hopefully within the 30, 60, 90-day plan to go forward.
Absolutely, and to that point, thank you for bringing that back to service there, Rob. This is a learning activity.
Yep.
For all of us. It doesn't matter how seasoned you are or unseasoned you are. It's a learning activity the entire time. And when you think about the number of people you're going to talk to, how you approach it, who you're talking to, maybe the dynamics, it can be world environment, it can be budgets, and all sorts of things, right? You have to think about, okay, how do I deal with it at this point in time? And that goes back to the scenario we talked about a moment ago. AI can't handle this, right? It doesn't have the human dynamic that we're talking about. And that's the part, well, I'm just bring back to that because I've seen a lot of AI push lately. I'm not saying it can't deal with scenarios, absolutely can, it can automate a lot. But the human element behind asset management, it can't. It just doesn't have the wherewithal, right? It can tell us the contracts are coming up for due. I can tell you the metrics are off, but it may not be able to tell you exactly what is off. Now, is it getting better? Absolutely is. I'm not saying it is. And trust me, I want to replace asset management because asset management can be quite complex.
Yep.
But if it helps raise our level of understanding for us to be more strategic in our roles, that's what I'm talking about. So I just want to bring us kind of that to closure. Because that's the whole idea. How can we be more strategic in our thinking? That's really the overall crux to all this whole exercise. Because when we think about that, tools are going to help us, people are going to help us. We've got people, process, technology, data, and governance. And when we think about those 5 different areas, we have a lot of assistance that's going to come to us. The question is, do we stay at a low level or do we think of strategic like the rest of the organization? And that's where we are for tonight. Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Deanna, for another great session. It's been phenomenal. And this has been great on several different fronts. And on Monday, we're going to start a whole new scenario. I haven't looked at it yet, so actually it's already out there. You want to take a look and see what we're going to put. We're going to do a whole new scenario one more time. Actually, we'll do it 2 more times. But this is where it gets to be fun. People say, this is fun. This is absolutely fun. This is what it's all about. When we start organizing people and help other people go that next step, that's our role. I know.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And think about that. That's what we enjoy. That's the whole livelihood. That's why we're here trying to inform everyone else because you're not taught these things. You're not being taught live. So welcome. You're welcome for the information. Hopefully this contributes and helps you go that next step and grow because I want you to grow. Because when you start growing and thriving with what you do and how you use it, people see it. You see the energy, the enthusiasm. And again, we're trying to bring fun back into this too. So that's the whole idea behind the kitchen, me wearing Dave and Daffy Duck. Is if you start bringing fun and enjoyment, people bring you back into the room. When people bring you back to the room, you have that real and that energy. It's huge. And then when you start set that realization, people start saying, oh my gosh, you're not in the room. I need Bill back in the room, as an example, or Rob or Deanna, whomever it may be, right? I need them in the room because we're missing them and they're a key critical part of this conversation. That's an awesome thing. Then you don't have the layoff happen as easily because they know the criticality behind you being there. That way, when you go, you feel like you're self-conscious, you go better. Not just self-conscious, but you feel better as a whole person because like, okay, I feel appreciated. That's all we're trying to do. Feel a little appreciation here and there. And that way, when you go home at night, it's like, you know what? I've done my best.
Yep.
I don't feel as burned out. I've been working my butt off, right? I've been doing my best. How can I better enjoy it? And now you get to enjoy it, shut it off a little bit, enjoy time with the family, and you get to enjoy life for what it's for. So with that, I'll leave it on that note. You have yourself a great weekend. We're going to sign off for now for this session, the ITAM Kitchen, talking about the CIO modernization without an inventory. If you've missed any of the sessions, feel free to look at the previous couple of days. We'll put that out there. And look at the YouTube. It's at ITAM Kitchen. And we have all the sessions out there right now, too. So thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Deanna. And we'll see everybody on Monday.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.